Hi, Dany.
Something happened.
What?
Something has happened.
What happened?
Everything's different now.
Everything is different now. Welcome to the shit show.
You're listening to Dot Fam.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Dot Fem. I'm your host, Danielle Gonzalez.
I'm Claire.
Claire, I had an entirely different episode planned for this recording, and then something happened in the news that I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this now.
Okay.
By the time this episode comes out, by the time y'all are listening to this, it's probably already been like a month, but
Oh boy.
it's still only like 2 weeks old for us right now.
Yeah.
So
Just basic stuff.
yeah. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about Harvey Milk.
Oh.
Because some things have happened. So
Yeah.
Claire, what do you know about Harvey Milk?
Would it surprise you if I said nothing?
Great. No, that doesn't surprise me in the least. You're the audience analog. That's why you're here.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly.
Okay, so why are we talking about Harvey Milk today? What has happened? Well,
I don't know.
our current, shall I say, questionable defense secretary, a Mr. Pete Hegseth, has
that guy.
recently ordered the Navy to rename a Navy oiler ship that was named the Harvey Milk. And now everyone's talking about Harvey Milk and why the ship should still be named after him. So we're going to go over all of that.
Okay, cool.
So, but, just, I guess, a little bit of context around this whole story. The USNS Harvey Milk is a John Lewis class oiler ship. That class, the John Lewis class, was named after U.S. Representative and Civil Rights Leader John Lewis.
Interesting.
And so the ships in that class were originally named after leaders who fought for civil rights, like
Cool.
Harvey Milk.
Awesome.
This particular ship was commissioned in 2016, and it was named after Harvey Milk at that time. He was a gay rights activist. He fought in the Korean War in the Navy and was the first openly gay official ever elected to public office in the U.S.
Oh, he's that guy.
That guy.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm on board. I'm
There
on
you
board,
go.
baby.
At its christening ceremony in 2021, when the ship was finally completed,
Yeah.
then Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Del Toro, said that it was not just to amend the wrongs of the past, but to give inspiration to all of our queer community leaders who served in the Navy in uniform today and in the civilian workforce as well, and to tell them that we're committed to them in the future. So that was the original intent of naming
Yeah,
the
it
ship.
sounds like a great intent.
Unfortunately, the current administration went way back on that and has ordered the name Harvey Milk be stripped from the ship. So
That's not good.
that's why we're talking about Harvey Milk today.
Okay, that's a great reason. Replenish. Oh, it's an auxiliary ship with fuel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aha.
Support
Okay,
ship.
cool. So this is a support ship. All right.
Correct.
And okay, so this is like a logistics class ship.
Yes.
So interesting. All right. Well, I'm curious to see who Harvey Milk is
Right.
and what a disservice that they're doing to him now.
Yep.
I'm upset that they're doing this, and it's bullshit that this random SS officer who's now leading our Navy is erasing our history. Take it away, Dany.
Well, to talk about Harvey Milk, first we have to talk a little bit about the Castro.
Okay. Like as in Fidel Castro?
No, not
Like
that
as
Castro.
in-
Not that Castro. The Castro district of San Francisco.
The what?
It's also just called the Castro. It's a neighborhood. It's a
All
neighborhood in
right.
San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. All right. We're not talking about Cuba.
No, not today. The Castro is one of the oldest and largest gayborhoods in the United States. The Castro was named after Jose Castro, who was a California Mexican leader who opposed U.S. rule in California. The neighborhood was created in 1887. Fun fact, though, the Castro is one of the few neighborhoods that actually survived the 1906 earthquake and fire that destroyed over 80% of San Francisco. So
Wow.
I say survived. It was damaged, but it wasn't like completely burned to the ground like 80% of the city was. Also, fun fact, during the California Gold Rush and prior to the 1906 earthquake, the neighborhood was predominantly Finnish.
Oh.
After the earthquake, a large number of Finns ended up leaving the neighborhood, which allowed for large numbers of Danish, Norwegian, and Swedish folks to move in, which is why the neighborhood after 1910 is also called Little Scandinavia.
Ah.
I don't know if it's still called Little Scandinavia, but it was for a while.
We have a lot of like Norwegian, Swedish like influence on this West Coast. And in Seattle, I didn't realize that it was down all the way to like San Francisco area.
Yeah, well, here's a tangent that I'm gonna totally cut out of the episode.
We love it.
One of the things that I've learned in doing research on like my family history, for instance, is that a lot of times ethnic groups will move, they'll immigrate to regions that are geographically similar to where they left.
Oh, interesting.
It's the same reason why, my mom's side of the family, Volga Germans, a lot of them settled in the Midwest in like Kansas and Michigan and stuff, because it's pretty flat, good for farming. That's what they did in Russia, so it kind of just seems to kind of make sense. So,
well, that was one of my reasons for moving to Seattle was because like there was a lot of water, there was a lot of trees, and like I spent a lot of time up at Central Michigan, which is kind of like where all of the Great Lakes kind of start.
Yeah.
And so I just like, I knew, like, I don't know, it just felt similar. Like Seattle has a very similar climate, just rains more, which I like the rain. It just, it felt like home. I was also thinking of Maine for a similar reason.
That's a much better reason than why I moved to Seattle.
Why did you move to Seattle, Danny?
Because it was geographically the furthest I could get away from Savannah, Georgia.
That was what my brother did in college. He was like, how far can I get away? He went all the way from the Upper Peninsula, and we grew up near Detroit. So it was like, I left Savannah at a low point in my life, and I just needed to get away from that city. So speaking of low points.
Yeah. So in the early 1940s, during World War II, the U.S. military discharged thousands of gay servicemen in general because of their sexuality, because they were gay. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those who served in the Pacific Theater ended up settling in the Bay Area. Mm. I've heard a lot of different reasons for this, but the most common reason that I've heard explained for like why the Bay Area is because the military forts around the San Francisco Bay Area were kind of a staging spot for like the Pacific Theater in World War II. So when a lot of these men were discharged, they, ended up being shipped back to San Francisco because it's probably where they shipped out of. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the men didn't want to return home to their families or hometowns in shame after being dishonorably discharged for being gay and, involuntarily outed as gay, essentially. So they just kind of stayed. They just kind of stayed put in San Francisco. But yeah, so a lot of the gay men that were discharged from the military just kind of ended up staying in San Francisco, and they settled in a couple different neighborhoods and built sort of a strong gay community, or the start of a strong gay community, including the Tenderloin District, which we talked about in episode 1.
Yep.
But also the neighborhood of Soma, or south of Market, and the Castro. So, and in fact, because of the influx of gay men from the military settling in and around the Castro, in the 50s, a lot of families fled the Castro and moved out to the suburbs in an event that's been called the White Flight. And so this left the Castro district kind of predominantly queer.
Is the white flight something that's like a racially charged term?
I don't know. I didn't see anything about that in my research. It was just referred to as the white flight. So I'm not entirely sure where the origin of that term comes from.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to...
It does seem like most of this neighborhood was originally white families, and a lot of these
Scandinavian
families,
influence.
Right, and a lot of them fled the gay influx of folks. So the white flight ended up kind of leaving the Castro as a predominantly queer neighborhood. And this opened up a bunch of real estate creating new opportunity for queer entrepreneurs. For instance, the Missouri Mule, which is a bar opened in 1935 by Norwegian immigrants, ended up closing and then being reopened in 1963 as the first gay bar in San Francisco.
Is it still open?
I don't think so. I think I think it went out of business, a couple decades ago. But
damn.
Yeah, so the Castro really started to find its reputation as like, a gay mecca around this time, and especially during the late 60s with the Summer of Love. The hippie movement, Summer of Love, situation really started to challenge gender norms and had this celebration of androgyny and communal living and free society. And this, as it does today, kind of naturally meshed really well with the queer community that was getting established in the Castro. And a bunch of queer hippies moved from all across the country, ended up moving to California, to San Francisco. And because there were a bunch of cheap, empty houses in the Castro left behind after the white flight, it was an attractive and stable area to move to.
Okay.
Which created an upscale, fashionable, gay urban center that a lot of really important community businesses popped up that were queer owned, like, for instance, a small neighborhood camera store called Castro Camera. Okay, anyway, so now that we figured out, the neighborhood of the Castro, who was Harvey Milk?
Yeah.
So Harvey Milk was born and raised in New York City in the suburb of Woodmere to a William Milk and Minerva Carnes in May of 1930. He was the youngest son in a Litvak family, and his grandfather was a department store owner and community
Hang
organizer.
on, what is a Litvak?
Yeah, so Litvak is just Jewish folks from like the Lithuania geographic region.
Wow.
So yeah, so Harvey, came from a very Jewish, kind of conservative business owner family, Harvey was known as something of a class clown. In high school, he played football, and he developed a passion for opera. So,
Ooh, I like opera too.
Yeah, he really enjoyed listening to opera. In his high school yearbook, there was a caption under his name that read, "Glimpy Milk, and they say women are never at a loss for words."
Wow.
So he's kind of a campy individual, fun.
Yeah, seems like it.
Exuberant.
Eccentric.
Harvey acknowledged and struggled with his sexuality from a young age, but he always really tried to keep his romantic life pretty secret.
Sounds like a lot of queer people I know.
Yeah, exactly. In 1947, he went to college at the New York State College for Teachers in Albany. I believe it's now called the State University of New York at Albany, where he majored in mathematics as well as writing for the college's newspaper.
Nice.
A former classmate from college recounted later, after he passed away, that he was never thought of as being possibly queer. He was, quote, a man's man.
What?
Right? Interesting.
That's before I transitioned, everyone was really surprised because I was very stoic and kind of in that leadership position at college, doing all the things, and so many people were so surprised. They were like, "What? I didn't see that coming from a mile away." Except all the girls I dated were like, "Yeah, it makes sense."
Yeah, I had kind of the same. So after he graduated from college, he joined the U.S. Navy during the Korean War, where he served on the submarine rescue ship, the USS Kitawake, I believe is how that's pronounced, as a diving officer.
Cool.
Later, he ended up transferring to the naval station at San Diego and served as a diving instructor there.
As you do.
Right. But in 1955, he was forced to resign from the Navy and accept an other than honorable discharge instead of being court-martialed for being gay. After which he moved back to the New York area. During this whole period in his life, Harvey was a very staunch conservative. He even worked for Barry Goldwater's 1964 presidential campaign, which I don't know if you know a whole lot about Barry Goldwater.
I know.
Barry Goldwater was the Trump before Trump.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Oh, I know this guy.
Really kind of shocking that Harvey, was such a staunch conservative given his identity. But, I think it's safe to say that a lot of us probably, before we come out, we're different people, right?
Yep.
we're trying to suppress things and hold on to views that we think will, make us acceptable in society, that kind of thing. So it's, it's both kind of shocking, but not surprising that Harvey was so conservative back then.
Yeah.
Over these next few years in New York, Harvey would date multiple guys that he would always keep secret, and much to the stress of the relationship, even causing some of his partners to threaten suicide for being kept in the closet, which Harvey's often talked about later on, that he deeply regretted. Like, he never intended them to feel that way. He was just scared of coming out. But he ended up kind of bouncing around the country around this time, from New York to Texas, back to New York, then to California for a little bit, then back to New York again.
Wow. Well, like, how old was he around this time? Like, he was in 1947, he went to college. This is 1964, so he's probably pushing 40 about right now, right?
He's in his mid-30s, yeah.
Mid-30s?
Yeah, mid-30s around this time. And then in 1970, when he was still in San Francisco for a period, he became increasingly frustrated with the political climate. And, he was very opposed to the U.S. invading Cambodia during the Vietnam War. And, so a lot of his conservative views are starting to be challenged. And he starts spending time with, the anti-war movements and the hippie flower children. And
let's go. Free the nipple. Let's go.
Spending some time with the flower children, he starts, growing his hair out long. He starts smoking weed and going to like gay bathhouses in San Francisco, stuff like that. He was working for an investment firm in San Francisco, and his employer, told him he had to cut his hair. He couldn't keep it long. And Harvey was like, no, I'm gonna keep it long. So he was fired.
Wow.
And he ends up moving back to New York. But by this time, Harvey's much more liberal.
Yeah. I mean,
the time he spent with the hippie and anti-war movements had really kind of worn away his conservative edges at this point.
You hear our trans elders talk about this bullshit all the time. And it just like keeps coming back around. Like, if you didn't conform to like the heterosexual cisgender like status quo,
sure,
all he at least in this sense, like, all he had was long hair, and probably a little bit more effeminate to a certain degree, but like, it's I just can't believe that like the leap in logic there is, well, I don't want this person to work for me. They don't fit the vibe, so you're fired. And it's like it's just bigotry.
Yeah, it is. So Harvey gets fired. He ends up moving back to New York, and he kind of, at this point, he doesn't really have a plan for the future, kind of doing odd jobs.
Yeah.
He had some friends who worked on Wall Street because, he's worked for insurance and investment firms in the past. And I guess one of his friends who worked on Wall Street, in a later interview, recounted that he was initially concerned about Harvey because Harvey didn't seem to have a plan for the future, but said that he was the happiest he had ever seen at any time in his life. So, Harvey was in good spirits.
I once heard a quote that if you think about the future all the time, you have anxiety. If you think about the past all the time, you have depression. But if you exist in the here and now, you're pretty happy. Sounds like he had it figured out about now, which is good.
Part. So it was around this time that Harvey met Scott Smith, a young gay activist. They started dating. And then in 1973, Milk and Smith moved back to San Francisco and lived on some money that they had saved. And in March of that year, Harvey took a roll of film to a local photo shop, and the roll was ruined by the photo shop. And that kind of upset Harvey, understandably. You're a photographer, I'm sure you know.
That would be really frustrating.
Right.
Oh,
so
man. Frustrated,
Harvey and Smith used their last $1,000 to open their own camera store on Castro Street, which was called Castro Camera. This show is powered by our community. No ads, no algorithms, just people who care. So if you want to help .fem grow, we'd love to have you at patreon.com/.fem. That's patreon.com/DOTFEMME.
Oh, wait, I just got a spoiler alert. Oh my God.
Quit trying to jump ahead.
Castro Camera store was in the Castro district of San Francisco, operated by Harvey Milk from 1972 until his...
Spoiler! You're spoiling things.
No, nonsense.
At this time in the early 70s, 1973, the city's politicians and leaders are starting to recognize the growing organization and political cloud of the queer community.
Okay.
And this kind of inspires Harvey to become more interested in politics, and he's becoming more outspoken on civic matters and policies that he disapproved of.
Hell yeah.
Here's an example. This is kind of, I think, what sort of really kicked him off thinking about this. In 1973, a government bureaucrat comes into Castro Camera and tells Milk that he owes like $100 to the government as some kind of deposit against state sales tax.
Sure.
Also at this time, like a school teacher comes into the store and borrows a film projector because the equipment at the public schools were not well maintained. Their projector wasn't working. So
that's the irony.
Harvey's kind of pissed with like the government's like weird priorities. Mm-hmm. Not to mention, I came across this fantastic anecdote about, I guess he and some friends were watching the Watergate hearings.
Oh, yeah, that was going on this time.
And his friends had to physically restrain him to keep him from breaking and kicking and destroying the television.
That's how I feel most times I turn on the television, too.
Yeah, me too. So, you know, Harvey's like, he's getting politically active. He's very frustrated with the current situation. So he decides to run for city supervisor.
Nice. Okay.
Saying that, you know, it's the point where he knew he had to become involved or shut up. Initially, when he first announces his run, the gay political establishment in San Francisco was pretty upset with Milk. They were really frustrated that, like, he just moved here and he wants this prestigious office of city supervisor. How audacious, you know. Mm-hmm. You need to sit here and be quiet and be polite for years and, you know, make the connections required to try and make this run for city supervisor. And Milk's like, just because I'm new here, why can't I run for this, you know? Mm-hmm. But Milk really, he finds his element in politics. You know, he kind of, like we talked about, he didn't really have a plan before. He was kind of bouncing around doing odd jobs, working in like finance and whatnot, but like his heart wasn't really in it. But now in San Francisco at this point, he's really kind of like, this is it. This is what he wants to do. This is where his heart is. In his first election, he earned nearly 17,000 votes, which, you know, swept the Castro and other liberal neighborhoods.
Of course.
He came in 10th out of 32 candidates, which was
that's huge.
You know, shocking success for a, you know, newcomer to the city.
Yep.
But unfortunately, he didn't win a city supervisor position. The way the elections worked in San Francisco at the time was the entire city voted on all the supervisor positions. Even though the supervisors represented a specific district, right? Mm-hmm. The entire city voted on all of them. And there were only, I think, 6 city supervisor positions. And so the top 6 winners got the supervisor positions. He came in 10th, still really impressive for someone new, but not high enough to get a supervisor position. So he didn't win that election. Afterward, he decides that he really needs to try and make these community connections. He did a great job as a newcomer, but like if he's going to try again, and he's thinking about trying again, he needs to, you know, really kind of ingratiate himself into the community. So he starts, you know, building these coalitions, becoming a strong political ally for organized labor, for instance.
Excellent.
He starts to style himself as the mayor of Castro Street, really quickly becoming, you know, a beloved community leader and political activist. In 1973, a couple of gay men try to open an antique shop in the Castro district, and the existing Chamber of Commerce organization tries to deny them a license to do it.
Oh.
And so Harvey joins a couple of other gay business owners and starts the Castro Village Association, which is a competing gay Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, it's starting to get heavy.
A little bit, you know. So he serves as president for the CVA, the Castro Village Association, and his whole message was that gays should buy from gay businesses.
Agreed.
Support your community.
Yep.
So in 1974, Milk and the CVA organized the Castro Street Fair to try and attract more customers to the area. More than 5,000 people attend, and local businesses ended up doing more at the street fair than on any previous day in their entire history.
Wow.
So it was a massive success. the straight Chamber of Commerce organization, and there was another gay Chamber of Commerce organization that was a bit more, shall we say, polite. Like they wanted to like not ruffle any feathers and blend in, you know?
Yeah, they leaned a little more capitalist.
Yeah. And both of these organizations were shocked at how well the Castro Street Fair did.
It's cool to see how far like he's come just in this like last, how many years has this been?
Year and a half.
A year and a half. Yeah, like from
This
the
is like 18
time
months.
from the time he opened his camera shop to now, like he just immediately like cemented himself as like a figure of this community. And yeah, it was quick. He obviously had motivation. He had momentum. He was really pushing forward, for everything. And it seems like he was well loved.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 1975, Harvey, kind of seeing the success of this and sort of really riding on the high of, these community praises and whatnot, he decides it's time to try running for city supervisor again. But this time he's going to reconsider his approach. So he cuts his hair. He starts wearing suits. He stops smoking marijuana. And his campaign earns the support of the Teamsters, the firefighters, the construction unions.
Wow.
And he based his campaign right out of his business, Castro Camera. So a lot of people start hanging around Castro Camera. It becomes this kind of nexus of the community.
Totally.
Harvey just starts pulling people off the street to like help work for his campaign.
Cool.
Once again, though, he doesn't quite get in that top 6. He comes in 7th place, just one spot away. But you see, like, this is kind of working. Like, it's growing. However, the very liberal and gay-friendly mayor, George Moscone, he knows of Harvey. Harvey's a community leader. So he comes to Milk's election headquarters at Castro Camera and offers Harvey a position of city commissioner.
Damn.
Which is an appointed office, not an elected office. But, it's, once again, like, Harvey's kind of really making inroads in this world.
Yeah.
It is, however, around this time, just a couple years later, Anita Bryant shows up on the stage. And I don't know if you know much about Anita Bryant.
I don't know anything about Anita Bryant.
Anita Bryant was a singer turned anti-gay activist.
Oh.
She was pretty instrumental in like rolling back what protections gay folks had accomplished in the few years after Stonewall.
Yeah.
Yeah, Anita Bryant sucks, and I take great pleasure knowing that she's roasting in hell.
Yeah.
So in 1977, Anita Bryant shows up on the stage, and she, runs this whole political campaign in Miami-Dade County in Florida to repeal the gay protections ordinance that Miami had. I think it was only a couple months old when she organized this movement to get it repealed.
Hang on. How did we get to Miami?
Well, I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
Harvey's not in Miami. Harvey is in San Francisco.
All right.
Anita Bryant is in Miami, but this is important. Anita successfully gets this gay protections ordinance repealed, and California State Senator John Briggs, who is hoping to win the governorship in the next election, and is very impressed with what Anita Bryant has done. So he tries to do something similar in California. He writes a bill that would ban gays and lesbians from teaching in public schools in California. And it would also, like, not only would gay and lesbian teachers be fired, but any teacher who supports them would also be fired.
Oh.
Pretty draconian.
Yep, sounds a lot like what's going on right now.
Yeah. Briggs gives a private interview with gay journalist Randy Schiltz, in which he says, "I have nothing against the gays, it's just politics."
Yeah, bullshit.
But as we see time and time again, then and now, it's not just politics.
Nope.
That year saw random attacks on gay inhabitants of the Castro skyrocket. In early June of 1977, 4 days before the Pride celebration, a gay man named Robert Hillsborough was murdered. He died from 15 stab wounds while his attackers stood around him chanting faggot. It was pretty horrific. And this comes just a couple weeks after Briggs had held a press conference at San Francisco City Hall on the steps, where he called the city a sexual garbage heap because of the homosexuals. So it feels pretty directly relevant. It's not just politics. And in fact,
No.
Mayor Moscone, as well as the victim's mom, publicly blames Briggs and Anita Bryant for the murder, for drumming up this anti-gay fervor that is getting people killed. So Harvey decides to run again a third time for city supervisor in 1977. Originally, he wasn't sure he was going to. He didn't know that if he had another campaign in him. But the murder of Robert Hillsborough, from what I understand, kind of inspired him to try again. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't just that. The year before, in 1976, the city voted to change how the elections work, and the rules were different. Now, instead of the entire city voting ballot-wide for city supervisors, the districts get to elect their own supervisors themselves. And if those rules had been in place for the last two elections Harvey ran,
He would have won.
he would have won, both of them.
Yeah.
So he decides to run again a third time in 77. And in November, in this election, he wins very handily.
Nice.
He won the election for District 5 supervisor, which included the Castro and a couple other surrounding liberal neighborhoods. At this point, Harvey, he's kind of done it.
Yep.
He's become the first out openly gay, non-incumbent man to become elected to public office.
Woo!
Really just kind of taking this outrage and using it to fuel his campaign.
So this story's like real dense, Dany. It's real dense. And I think it's maybe best we kind of move it into like a two-parter? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Ooh, yeah. You make a valid point. There's still a fair bit to talk about, and we've been talking for a little while already. So,
You want to do a two-parter?
yeah, I think let's do it. Let's do our very first two-parter.
Yeah. So, okay. Join us next week where we learn what not to do when you get fired.
Ooh, how cryptic. Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much for joining us for this part one of the story of Harvey Milk. If you like what we do here, if you've enjoyed this episode, you can find us on our website. You can find us on Blue Sky. If you would like to support us financially to ensure that we can keep bringing you these important queer histories, please visit our Patreon. Consider supporting us that way. You can find additional episodes of this podcast wherever you get your podcast. That's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Deezer, iHeartRadio, directly on our website, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And with that, we will see you next time for the thrilling conclusion of the story of Harvey Milk. Once again, thank you so much for listening. I'm Danielle Gonzalez.
I'm Claire.
And we'll see you next time.